We're restructuring the advisory department to focus on emerging sectors, Morgan," said Victoria, sliding a manila folder across her modern glass desk. "Unfortunately, your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. My name is Morgan Chen, 51 years old. 12 years as Managing Director of Advisory Services at Horizon Partners in downtown Seattle, Washington. I devoted over a decade to building an advisory practice that now generated roughly 45% of the firm's annual fee income. No shortcuts, just relentless client commitment, international flights at midnight, and relationships cultivated through years of proven expertise and results. I maintained a measured expression, thanked her for the opportunity, and left without protest. Victoria Prescott had arrived 8 months prior as our new Chief Operating Officer, recruited by the founder to modernize our approach to advisory services. She wore designer pantsuits, spoke in corporate buzzwords, and had never once participated in a major client presentation. Within a month of her arrival, she'd implemented a performance-based allocation system that effectively reduced my compensation by 25%, despite my division consistently exceeding targets. The warning signs have been accumulating. My office had been relocated from the executive floor during space optimization. My speaking slots at quarterly meetings were gradually shortened, then eliminated. Yesterday, I'd noticed IT personnel inspecting my computer while I attended an off-site client meeting. Small details, seemingly insignificant alone, but collectively telling a clear story. I packed 12 years into 2 leather portfolios, family photographs, an engraved fountain pen from my mentor, and a handwritten journal of client notes and preferences I'd maintained separate from our CRM database. Old habit, nothing more. "Do you need any help, Morgan?" asked Dennis from operations, looking confused. "Are they moving you to another office?" "Something like that," I replied with a slight smile, preferring discretion. In the elevator, I stood next to Catherine Reynolds, the firm's founder and CEO. She offered a distracted hello, eyes fixed on her tablet. She had no comprehension of what Victoria had just orchestrated or how it would impact the next quarter's performance. But that realization would come soon enough. Walking to my car in the underground garage, I felt no anger. Just surprising clarity, like removing glasses you've worn so long you'd forgotten they were distorting your vision. I drove home without music or calls, simply processing. My phone vibrated as I pulled into my driveway. Elena Vasquez, my largest client. Her quinquennial strategy review was scheduled for next week. She was asking about dinner reservations for her team's visit. She wasn't yet aware. No one was. I placed the phone on my kitchen island without responding and gazed out at Puget Sound through the window. 12 years of client partnerships, all constructed on my reputation and consistency. Victoria hadn't merely terminated an employee today. She'd severed the essential connection between Horizon and millions in advisory fees, completely unaware of what she'd done. I joined Horizon when it was still called Reynolds Advisory Group, before the rebranding and expansion to our prestigious downtown tower. Catherine hired me personally, directly from a bulge bracket firm where I'd consistently exceeded expectations but remained trapped in middle management. "I need someone who understands this market at its core," she had said. "Someone clients see as their trusted advisor, not just another consultant." For 10 years, her trust was well placed. I expanded our client base from regional technology firms to multinational corporations, converted project-based engagements to multi-year retainer relationships, secured Novatech when they terminated their relationship with our largest competitor, added the Westridge Group when everyone said they were unattainable. My husband Daniel would joke that I was having an affair with my calendar. "Meeting with the Lopez Group on Saturday again?" he'd ask, already knowing my answer. Our son and daughter grew accustomed to my absence at soccer tournaments and piano recitals. Moms with clients became their normal. I promised it would be worthwhile eventually. 3 promotions, a merger, 1 market crash, and countless late nights later, Horizon had grown from a $15 million boutique firm to a $120 million industry leader, with my advisory practice responsible for approximately $54 million of that revenue. Not that anyone had calculated the precise contribution until Victoria's arrival. The first indication of trouble appeared during a strategic planning session 4 months after Victoria took over operations. "Your new client acquisition metrics have plateaued," she noted, pointing to a slide showing I'd only onboarded 3 new clients that quarter. "Because I'm prioritizing depth with existing relationships," I explained. "The Westridge engagement just expanded by 40%. Future growth requires new logos," Victoria countered. "We need rainmakers, not relationship managers." The following week, my executive assistant, Sophia, was transferred to another department. The next month, my travel requests faced additional scrutiny. My quarterly reviews became increasingly critical. Small modifications, gradually compounding. I began hearing whispers about innovation specialists being interviewed. Recent MBA graduates with digital transformation experience, but no industry expertise. Victoria referred to them as disruptors. Last month, she hired Thomas Reynolds, 32, from a digital strategy startup. During his first week, he was assigned to join me for a presentation to Elena Vasquez. No proper introduction or context provided, just observing our current approach. Elena noticed immediately. After the meeting, she texted me, "Who's the eager new guy? Training your successor?" I dismissed her concern, just expanding the team's capabilities. But on my drive home that evening, I felt this distinctive certainty in my stomach. The kind that comes from decades of reading boardroom dynamics and client reactions. Something fundamental had shifted. I should have trusted that instinct earlier. I placed my portfolios on the kitchen counter and poured a glass of Cabernet. The house was silent. Daniel was in Chicago for a medical conference until Thursday. Perhaps better this way. I needed the solitude. I removed my personal phone and scrolled through contacts. 12 years of relationships, over 230 clients, strategic partners, and industry connections. People who trusted my judgment on their most sensitive strategic decisions. People who'd engaged Horizon because of my expertise, not our marketing materials or prestigious address. My company phone, now deactivated in my portfolio, contained only the formal correspondence. The text messages about family matters, the restaurant recommendations, the direct numbers of C-suite executives. Those resided on my personal device. Details accumulated through becoming someone people not only worked with, but trusted. I sipped my wine and experienced a peculiar tranquility. No anxiety, no immediate concern about mortgage payments or insurance coverage. Just a lucid understanding of what had transpired and what would inevitably follow. The wine was smooth, but left a bitter finish. 12 years of 70-hour weeks, of anniversaries celebrated in airport lounges and holiday gatherings cut short by client emergencies. 12 years building something I believed was partially mine, only to discover it never was. I opened my laptop and reviewed my employment agreement. The non-compete clause existed but was constrained in scope. 18 months and only applicable to voluntary departures. Involuntary termination substantially changed the equation. There was no legal impediment to serving my clients elsewhere. My phone vibrated with another message from Elena. Dinner reservation confirmed at Canlis for Wednesday. Looking forward to discussing the strategic review. I stared at her message thoughtfully. Elena Vasquez represented approximately $4.2 million in annual revenue for Horizon. Her company, Novatech, had been my client for 7 years. Before that, 4 years at my previous firm, over a decade of established trust. And she wasn't alone. Westridge Group, Pinnacle Systems, Atlas Global. Together they accounted for another $11.6 million annually. All had contract renewals approaching within the next 60 days. All worked exclusively through me. I set my glass down and made my decision. I wouldn't make any calls tonight, wouldn't draft emotional emails or issue demands. I'd sleep, awaken clear-headed, and then make precisely 5 phone calls. Not to complain or entice, simply to inform my key clients that as of today, I was no longer with Horizon Partners. The subsequent events would unfold naturally. I removed the family photographs from my portfolio. My daughter's college graduation, my son's research award, the anniversary trip to Kyoto, nearly canceled due to a client crisis. I'd sacrificed too much already. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of different priorities. I finished my wine and went upstairs to an empty bedroom. For the first time in years, I didn't set an alarm. No international calls to prepare for, no pitch decks to review before sunrise. Just the quiet certainty that Victoria Prescott had made a catastrophic miscalculation. And I simply needed to step aside and allow the consequences to materialize. I made my 5 calls the following morning. No theatrics, just information. Elena, I'm no longer with Horizon as of yesterday. I wanted you to hear it directly from me. Her response was immediate. What happened? Who's managing our account now? Victoria Prescott will likely contact you. Or perhaps Thomas Reynolds. A long pause. The young man from last week's meeting. He doesn't understand our industry. That's all I can share with you. The rest is entirely your decision. Similar conversations with Jonathan Westridge, Amara Okafor, David Pinnacle, and Lena Atlas. No solicitation, no recruitment pitch. Simply information delivered with the same professionalism they'd always received from me. By early afternoon, my personal phone was constantly vibrating. Other clients had learned the news. Our industry was remarkably interconnected. At 3:15, Catherine Reynolds called. I let it go to voicemail. Morgan, this is Catherine. We need to discuss transition arrangements. Multiple clients are expressing significant concerns. Please return my call as soon as possible. I didn't. Instead, I drove downtown to meet with William Chen, a specialist in employment law. I'd helped his daughter secure venture funding for her sustainable fashion startup 2 years ago. He owed me. They cannot prevent you from working, William confirmed after examining my termination documentation. But they will attempt to intimidate clients who wish to follow you. Prepare accordingly. By 4:45, Horizon's legal department had emailed a reminder about confidentiality obligations. By 5:30, Victoria had texted, "Let's discuss a separation agreement. There might be flexibility for consulting arrangements." Too late. My phone buzzed again at 6:10. "Elena, just finished a call with your CEO and that COO who terminated you. They promised seamless continuity, said Thomas would personally oversee everything, then offered a 15% fee reduction for renewal." "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That I'd consider their proposal." I remained silent. Elena continued, "I've sent formal notice terminating our agreement, citing material change in service delivery. Westridge and Atlas did the same. Still, I said nothing." "Morgan, where are you going? Because wherever that is, that's where our business is going." That evening, 4 additional companies from my client portfolio sent termination notices to Horizon. By morning, the count had reached 12, representing over $21 million in annual fees. Catherine called an emergency executive committee meeting. I know because Sophia, my former assistant, messaged me. "Absolute chaos here. Victoria trying to blame you for client interference. Catherine demanding to know why nobody anticipated this outcome." My phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Morgan Chen?" I answered. "Elijah Crawford, Meridian Advisors. A respected competitor, smaller firm, superior reputation. I understand you're available, and several mutual contacts speak exceptionally highly of your work." "I'm listening." "Executive director position, 7-figure signing bonus, complete autonomy over your client relationships, and partnership track with equity participation. When would you want me to start? Does Monday work for you?" I accepted immediately, not from necessity or anxiety, but because it precisely aligned with my worth, respect, independence, and acknowledgement of the value I created. That afternoon, Victoria texted again. "Executive committee approved a transition package. Full compensation for 9 months plus accelerated equity vesting. Just help us retain your client relationships." I didn't respond. There was nothing to discuss. They'd had 12 years to value what I'd built. Now they were desperately trying to quantify it after the fact. Insufficient. Far too delayed. 2 weeks into my role at Meridian Advisors, Sophia called from her personal number. "You should know what really happened." She spoke from her car in the parking garage. It wasn't merely Victoria wanting her selected team. I sat in my new corner office, more spacious than my previous one at Horizon, and listened as 12 years of history rearranged into a coherent narrative. They were negotiating an acquisition, Sophia explained. Highbridge Capital made an offer 3 months ago, but with specific conditions. They wanted to integrate their own advisory team for the major client accounts, combine them with their existing financial services group. The puzzle pieces aligned perfectly. Victoria hadn't been hired to enhance operations. She'd been brought in to transition client relationships away from me, transforming them into corporate assets rather than relationships dependent on an individual advisor. My termination wasn't performance-related. It was acquisition preparation. "How do you know this?" I asked. "I still support the executive suite. I see the documents, hear the discussions. Yesterday, they suspended negotiations. Highbridge won't proceed without the client base you developed." After we disconnected, I remained motionless for several minutes. 12 years of dedication, and they had been prepared to systematically detach me from my clients, like removing an unnecessary intermediary. Not because I underperformed, but because I succeeded too effectively. The relationships were excessively personal, too client-centric. They needed me removed before clients could be repackaged as transferable assets. I checked my email inbox. More former clients had reached out. The industry was abuzz with developments. Morgan Chen had joined Meridian, and clients were following. Horizon stock had declined 17% in 2 weeks. My phone displayed a message from Catherine. "Can we meet? Just us. No lawyers." I didn't immediately respond. The deeper betrayal settled like ice in my chest. Not merely terminated, deliberately sacrificed as a component in a corporate acquisition strategy. I called Elena Vasquez. "I need to ask you something," I began. "Did Horizon introduce you to anyone from Highbridge Capital during the past few months?" A pause. "How did you know?" "They brought someone named Richard to our quarterly review in March. Introduced him as a strategic advisor analyzing industry trends. Asked numerous questions about our future requirements. Confirmation. They had been introducing Highbridge representatives to my clients, preparing for transition while I remained employed, still believing I was building something meaningful. Additional calls revealed the identical pattern. Behind my back, meetings arranged, information gathered, relationships examined for vulnerabilities or areas where I might be deemed replaceable. By day's end, I'd confirmed that at least 9 of my major clients had been surreptitiously introduced to Highbridge representatives, all presented as strategic advisors or industry analysts. I finally responded to Catherine. "No meeting necessary. I'm fully aware of the Highbridge situation." Her reply arrived promptly. "It was a business decision, Morgan. Nothing personal." But it was entirely personal. 12 years developing relationships, remembering clients' children's accomplishments and their favorite wines, answering calls during vacations and holidays, all reduced to an obstacle for a corporate transaction. I closed my laptop and gazed at the Seattle skyline from my new office. The perspective was different here, somehow clearer. Meridian had already secured contracts with 16 of my former clients, representing nearly $28 million in annual revenue, with more in discussion. Not because I was actively recruiting them, but because in our profession, trust follows individuals, not corporate identities or business strategies. Horizon hadn't merely lost an advisor. They'd lost the foundation their growth was constructed upon, and they still didn't completely comprehend why. 1 month after joining Meridian, I received an invitation to speak at the International Strategic Advisors Conference. The panel topic: Building Enduring Client Loyalty in a Commoditized Market. The irony wasn't subtle. I accepted, not for visibility or validation, but because I knew the audience composition, industry colleagues, potential clients, and crucially, Horizon's remaining leadership team. Catherine never missed this conference. Neither did the board members. Meanwhile, Meridian had provided resources Horizon never offered. A dedicated research team, custom client technologies, and most significantly, equity partnership. Every client I brought in wasn't merely fee income. It was building something I partially owned. I spent 3 weeks preparing for the conference, not with elaborate presentations or rehearsed stories, but with empirical evidence. Working evenings with my research team, I compiled performance metrics for every client who had transitioned with me from Horizon to Meridian. The results were unequivocal. Average response time improved by 41%. Implementation costs reduced by 35%. Client satisfaction scores increased by 19 points. It wasn't about my individual contribution. It demonstrated what happens when firms prioritize relationships over transactions. The morning of the conference, I reviewed my notes one final time. No dramatic revelations, no explicit naming, just facts and outcomes. Professional, measured, devastating. As I entered the convention center ballroom, I immediately noticed Catherine in conversation with board members near the registration area. Her expression tightened upon seeing me. I nodded courteously and continued walking. The panel discussion began with conventional questions about digital transformation and post-pandemic advisory trends. When my opportunity to speak arrived, I addressed the fundamental issue directly. In an era where everything is digitized and automated, human judgment has become the scarcest commodity, I stated. Organizations frequently mistake client relationships for proprietary assets. They aren't. They're trust agreements between people that require constant reinforcement. I presented my research without explicitly mentioning Horizon, simply case studies of clients who had changed firms and experienced immediate improvements. The lesson isn't about retention bonuses or contractual clauses, I concluded. It's about recognizing that when you treat relationship builders as replaceable components, clients will demonstrate precisely how incorrect that assumption is. During the Q&A session, an audience member, a young consultant I didn't recognize, asked the question everyone was considering. Isn't your recent transition from Horizon to Meridian, along with numerous major clients, exactly the scenario organizations fear when evaluating relationship manager autonomy? The room grew silent. I could feel Catherine's gaze from across the space. That's a legitimate question, I replied. But consider the alternative. Horizon didn't lose those clients because I took them, but because they fundamentally misunderstood what those clients truly valued. No one followed me based solely on personal loyalty. They followed because their needs were consistently better addressed through my approach to service, an approach my former employer determined was no longer aligned with their direction. I paused, making brief eye contact with Catherine. Every firm has the right to change strategic direction, and every client has the right to determine if that new direction serves their interests. The market functions with ruthless efficiency that way. After the panel, 5 additional former Horizon clients approached me. By the conclusion of the conference, Meridian had signed letters of intent with 7 new accounts representing another $13.5 million in annual revenue. That evening, I checked industry news. Horizon had announced a reorganization. Victoria Prescott was pursuing other opportunities. The Highbridge acquisition was officially terminated. Their stock had declined another 11%. I closed my laptop without satisfaction or vindication. Just the quiet certainty that comes from being proven right in the most definitive manner possible. By the market itself. The message had been delivered. Whether they would internalize it was no longer my concern. 8 months after my termination, I stood in Meridian's boardroom, surrounded by my team and the firm's leadership. The screen displayed our quarterly results. $42 million in new business, 65% from former Horizon clients. Elijah Crawford himself raised a glass. To the best talent acquisition we've ever made, and we didn't even have to buy a company to get it. Polite laughter circulated through the room. I smiled but didn't join the laughter. This wasn't a celebration for me. It was validation. My phone displayed a news alert. Horizon Partners announces leadership transition. Catherine Reynolds steps down amid continued revenue challenges. I returned the phone to my pocket without showing anyone. Some victories require no audience. Later that afternoon, I received an email from Thomas Reynolds, the young man Victoria had positioned as my eventual replacement. I've been let go along with most of the advisory team. Any positions available at Meridian? I forwarded it to our talent director with a note. Worth interviewing. Not his responsibility. As I was leaving the office, my assistant handed me an envelope delivered by courier. Inside was a handwritten note from Catherine Reynolds. You were right. I sacrificed relationship for transaction. Cost the firm everything. If you're ever willing to have coffee, I'd welcome the opportunity to apologize personally. I folded the note and placed it in my jacket. Perhaps someday. Not yet. That evening, driving home, I passed Horizon's building. The sign was being modified. They were being acquired by a regional firm at a fraction of their former valuation. The Business Journal had reported they were consolidating operations and relocating to smaller offices. I didn't slow down or take a photograph. Simply drove forward, focused on the path I was creating on my own terms. 18 months to the day after Victoria had slid those termination papers across her desk, I signed the final documents, making me a named partner at Meridian Crawford Chen Advisors. The firm had grown 51% since my arrival. My client practice now represented nearly $75 million in annual revenue. I closed the leather portfolio containing the partnership agreement and looked out at the Seattle skyline, rain gently tracing patterns on the glass. The same city, the same industry, but everything else transformed. Daniel entered with 2 cups of tea. Signed and official? I nodded. Signed and official? He sat across from me, studying my expression. You don't look as triumphant as I anticipated. Just reflecting on Horizon, I shook my head. About what I'm building here, about doing it differently this time. That morning, I'd approved establishing a relationship manager equity program, providing the same ownership structure I'd negotiated for myself. No one would build something here only to have it appropriated. That was my first initiative as partner. My phone vibrated. Elena Vasquez congratulating me on the partnership. Congratulations. Knew you'd emerge stronger. Thanks to clients like you. No, she corrected. Thanks to you being who you are. We simply followed the value. After we disconnected, I picked up the frame Daniel had given me for our anniversary. A simple quote elegantly presented. Your worth is not determined by your usefulness to others. I returned it to the credenza. That chapter was concluded. I opened my calendar and scheduled coffee with Catherine Reynolds. Not to revisit grievances or dissect the past, but because sometimes the final step in moving forward is releasing attachment to what came before. I shut down my computer, collected my coat, and left to meet Daniel. We had tickets to our daughter's photography exhibition, something I wouldn't have prioritized in my previous professional life. Some losses clear the path for more meaningful victories. Some bridges need to burn to illuminate the way forward. I'd never been more certain of that than I was today.